Hey, hello and welcome to this really fun horror tutorial by Flomotion. As I already showed you last year how to cut off your arm, today I'm going to show you this. Just follow me into After Effects. So as always, let's build this one from scratch. And let me tell you something, this tutorial is going to be so much fun because we are finally creating zombies. And as a quick info to that, as many of you know, I am a visual effects supervisor, and in the past I have worked on so many really fun projects, and one of them was The Walking Dead. So therefore I hopefully can show you some interesting insights on how to create all of this. So let's have a quick look on what we are going to create. But as there is also blood and gore involved, maybe you want to look away for the next 10 seconds and I give you a quick countdown so you know when to close your eyes. So let's do this. 3, 2, 1, go. And as you see here, those are some zombie shots for The Walking Dead that I was also working on. And most of the effects are actually achieved by adding something to it, so tracking parts of the zombies and adding stuff to it, or removing stuff with green screen as you see here, and then putting some fake stuff onto that. The same thing applies to this shot that I was also supervising for HBO. So this is always the same workflow. You need to track the head or the part where you want to add something and then basically add something to the track. So let's get into this and you can open up your eyes again. Before we really start bringing all of this together, as always, if you have any questions about this tutorial or about After Effects in general or about visual effects in general, then just leave a comment down below and I promise I will answer all of your comments. What I have done here is, of course, I filmed some footage. And when I bring this out, you will directly see how I did it. So I'm bringing out the zombie footage and drag it onto that new composition icon. And you can see it is me sitting there with a green suit underneath my t-shirt, and I cut it off parts of the shirt. Today we are going to take a look at two things. I want to remove that part and add something behind the shirt, and then I want to add something to my face. So we need to track this part around my head and we need to track my chest. And we will do that with a really powerful tracker that is called Mocha, and this is an effect within After Effects. And also on old Mocha tracking tutorials, some of you wrote that they have issues with aligning stuff and that something is a little bit tricky to figure out when you do it at first. So I really try to also focus on those issues that you had before, because there are actually some things you have to keep in mind while you do the tracking so that you don't get annoyed on your first try. And of course we need something that we can put into that shot later on, and therefore I have three options for you, and basically I did all those three options for this tutorial. The first thing is pretty easy. You search on the internet for something that you want to add, and in most of the cases you need to buy those stuff then. For example, I found this nice picture of a body that I want to use, and that one was about, I believe, $10. But you could also try the Google search and search for stuff that you are allowed to use, and you can define that in the search settings. Next one, you can shoot stuff for yourself. So I know not everybody has a skull at his home, but I do. Because, as you may have seen in other tutorials, I am collecting skulls, and so I brought out one bowl that is actually in the shape of a skull and just placed it in the same surrounding so that I have kind of the same light here. And the third thing that you can do is you don't buy something specific for that shot, but you have visual effects stock elements that you can use and reuse. And I did a tutorial about that already, and you can find that up here in the info card. And also there are some links where you can find some free stuff. And for that tutorial specifically, I reached out to triunedigital because they have a hell lot of bundles and assets that you can buy there, and they're actually pretty cheap for visual effects stock elements. And I already knew what I was going for, so I searched for slime, and there we have the slime pack. And while I was asking them if I could use that stuff within the tutorial, they also provided me with a link where you can download some free elements. So the link will also be in the description below. And again, thanks a lot for letting me use some of your stock elements. And here is the actual footage that I'm going to use. This is some slime dripping and also a slime surface. That is super handy for animating still images for your shot. And we will take a look at that later on. So I'm just going to define an area here that I want to track. Maybe this 5 seconds here, and I hit B for begin and N for end, so that I can trim my work area. And then when I right click on it, I can click on trim comp to work area. And now I'm only dealing with that part of the shot. And I'm doing that just to speed up this tutorial a little bit, and you don't always have to wait until I do the same steps for all the 20 seconds. So the first very important thing for Mocha is that you are aware on which frame you are. And as you see, as I have trimmed my clip, it now starts at the 5-second mark. But to keep it more organized, I want my comp to obviously start at frame 0. So I can do that by going to composition, composition settings, and for the start time code, I can just type in 0, hit OK, and now we are starting at frame 0. Another thing you can do is hold down Control and click on the time code here, and now you have frames. Perfect. Now let's bring out Mocha. And if you just type in Mocha, you have Mocha AE and just drag it onto the footage. I also have Mocha Pro installed, which just gives you some more professional features and tools. And if you want to learn more about that, I have also linked that in the description below, as well as a promotion code. So if you're considering buying the Pro version, you will get a discount on that with my link. But of course, I'm going to show you how you can do all of this within the built-in tools in After Effects. So we just click on Mocha, and that will open up our tracking window. And in here, this is super easy. Back on the first frame, we want to start our track. But what you can also see down here is that we are at frame 126, and this is a little bit strange. So let's quickly close this again. Mocha is still taking a look at the whole clip here. So let's also fix that by pre-composing our footage. Therefore, let's delete Mocha again. We go to Layer, Pre-compose, or hit Ctrl-Shift-C, and now I'm calling this the zombie footage, and I want to move all attributes into the new composition, and I want to adjust the composition duration to the time span of the selected layer, which is starting at 0 and going all the way until 100. And I hit OK, and now we have a composition starting at frame 0. So let's do this once again. We bring out Mocha for After Effects, open it up. Perfect, first issue solved. We are starting at frame 0 within Mocha and within After Effects. So now let's do this quick and dirty. And by quick and dirty, I mean in normal speed and pretty accurate. So you have different tools here, but for that kind of shot, I would take the X-spline tool and simply draw a shape around the area that I want to track. And I want to add the eye socket of the skull to my face. So I'm tracking that area. And remember, Mocha is a planar tracker. That means I wouldn't track the whole face if I want to add something to it. If I want to add different things to the face, I would do different tracks for the different eyes, for the mouth, for the chin, and so on. So that means that everything that is within that red line is somehow on one planar surface. Okay, so at the moment we could define that area and then hit track forward. But if you want to have a bit more information on what you're doing, you can switch back to the classic view, which opens up this window. By the way, 2 handy shortcuts, you can hit X and then you can reposition everything. And when you hit Z, you can zoom in and out. And in here, I can define how many pixels we want to use for the track, and normally a higher number is more accurate, but you can really play with this, and the higher the number, the more accurate it will get, but it also takes more time. Okay, so we have set up the first track at the first frame, and I just call this the head, because we can do multiple tracks at once within Mocha. So let's also track my chest at the same time. So this is about the part that I want to track. And if I would have done this tutorial like 1 or 2 years ago, I would have told you to put in markers on your face or add more structure to that green or even add markers to that green. But Mocha is so good, it just tracks that surface without tracking markers because it finds so much detail everywhere. I'm calling this one the chest. And again, for the chest, I'm going up to about 90%. And you see, once that setting wheel is activated, it will track it. And this is just useful if you track both of the shots and then later on you want to retrack something, just be aware to disable the other ones so that they don't track all over again. And this is basically everything you have to do. You go into Mocha, define the area that you want to track, and then you have the play buttons over here and the track buttons over here. And then you simply click on track forward and let Mocha do its thing. And while Mocha is doing its thing, you can already see if the track is working good or not. So let's quickly pause this, and you could also click on that grid here and define which you want to take a look at. And this is just optional for you to already see what the track is doing or to already see it better. So let's just quickly track this forward. And once this is done, you can play it back just to see if the track sticks. And it's working just fine for the chest. So let's also check out the head, and this is also working pretty good. So you can stop this and simply save this. Save project, and now you can close it. So now we are starting with the face. And remember, we said we want to do everything on the same frame. So we tracked on frame 0, the footage is on frame 0, and now I'm also creating the skull on frame 0. Let me bring out the skull that I have shot. And I'm roughly going to position this, bring down the transparency by hitting T for opacity. And again, I'm just showing you the workflow. If you want to make a Terminator face and bring out something like a robot, totally up to you. The workflow is the same. And something like this looks about right for me because honestly, I'm at the moment just looking at the eye. Of course, the mouth isn't right, but let's make this a creepy one. Now I'm just rotoing out the eye, but I'm already taking care that I have some cracks and some small detail in there. And something like this looks about right to me. But obviously we have to work on the look a bit more. So let's quickly bring out a roughen edges effect, and we can really play with this until we have a look that we are after. And you can see that a bit better when you disable the mask and just play with the roughen edges and the sharpness. And you see with and without, that just brings in more variation. And you could also play with the rusty color, because in that way you also get a nice color around the edges here. And just take your time and play with this until you are satisfied. Once we have the look somehow right, let's work on the integration of that. Because I want this to look like the skull is actually underneath the skin. So we can do that with a shadow. But if we bring out a shadow, like a drop shadow, it just looks like the skull is even more on top of everything. So we can't really do that with the drop shadow, but we can be pretty lucky that we have layer styles, because within layer styles we have an inner shadow, which does exactly what we want. So we can just click on our skull layer with right click, layer styles, and add an inner shadow. And there we already have something that looks kind of right. And down on the skull, you can go to the inner shadow and just tweak the settings. I also added another effect to it, which is called a bevel. And I'm beveling the alpha here. So for now, let's bring this back to the standard roughen effect so that we can just see a little bit better what we are doing here. So with the bevel alpha, we basically get some bright highlights on that side of our skin, because as you see, the light is coming from that direction and it gets darker on the other side. And we're slowly getting to a cool look. But of course this still doesn't look that much integrated, so I'm duplicating the zombie footage and call this hair, because I want to add the hair back on top of this, just to give it a little bit more detail. And therefore I'm using an extract effect, and you will see what this is doing when I'm just soloing this. I want to get rid of the skin tones, and they are brighter than my hair. So I'm just dragging that over and all the bright colors disappear until I only have my hair, and with that second slider here I can feather this a little bit. And let's unsolo this, and you can directly see what this is doing. The hair is now going over the skull, and with that you can tweak this further. You just have also to be aware to later on also cut out the eye, but you could also leave it in for a nice effect. But I'm going to create a quick mask around the eye and go to subtract. So 2 other things that I have done to make the integration work even better. I searched on the internet for some wounds and then I patched them over the border where everything blends together. And I also created like a bloody layer, added a fractal noise effect to it, set this to add, so it's still red. Just played a little bit with this, just brought it beneath the hair and used the skull to cut out the red solid. So you can do that with the track matte. So you basically use the alpha channel of the skull to cut out the red solid. And this is what this looks like then. And now we can play a little bit more. And then I'm just masking out the part where it intersects with the skull. And I'm feathering this a lot. And also bring down the opacity. So again, you can really play with this here and add patches and go into Photoshop and create a really nice looking first frame on your frame 0. Maybe also go into the levels effect and darken our eye a little bit. And I'm just going down to half resolution so that we can see this a little bit faster. And a really cool tip is once you have created your look, you can hit the Y key or you go to the pan behind tool and you can still reposition everything that you have created here. Okay, and back with the rusty color, this looks something like this. And as I told you, feel free to go into Photoshop or add more stuff to it. Search for blood and gore on the internet and add it. So, and once you are happy with that, we need to apply the track that we have done to our face. And remember what I told you, there are some known issues. One of them is that the footage that you have tracked needs to have the same resolution as your composition. So at the moment, this is scaled to 100%, so everything is fine. The footage, when I click on it, is 1920 by 1080, and our composition, when I show that settings, is 1920 by 1080. So that is fine, but our skull is just a small portion of the whole composition. But this is important. Everything that you track needs to have the same resolution and nothing easier than that. We just select all the 3 layers that make up the skull at the moment and pre-compose it. So layer, pre-compose. We call this our skull and hit OK. So now you see that the skull is also full screen. This is our skull layer at the moment and it has the same proportions like the whole composition. And this is really important. So we have already done 2 of 3 very, very important steps. Let me recap. First thing is everything we want to do within Mocha in After Effects and the stuff that we want to track onto our footage needs to happen in the same frame. So at the moment, everything has happened on frame 0. And then everything has to have the same proportions within Mocha, within After Effects, and the footage as well as what we want to track onto it. So we have already done that. Because we have the same resolution, the image reaches from edge to edge. So to say, the zombie footage is from edge to edge, the skull is from edge to edge. But let's click on Mocha again. We haven't done it in here. Let me show you the area that we have tracked so far, and you can show it by hitting that button, Show Planar Surface. And at the moment, this is the part that we have tracked, that blue square. And actually there's a button over here that is super important that is called Expand the Planar Surface of Selected Layers to fill the entire frame. And once I click that, we are on the entire frame. And now let's save it. And we can close it again. And we are almost done. Now everything is set up. And this is super easy once you have, keep it in mind that you want to have everything full frame at the same position. Now we can create our tracking data. And therefore we click on Create Tracking Data. And now we choose the layer that we want to use. And we want to use the head. So when clicking on the head, you can also see that it is now enabled. And I click OK. Next thing, I want to define to which layer I want to add this data. And of course, I want to add it to our skull. So layer export to skull. The tracking data that we have created should be applied on our skull. And what do we want to do with it? In this case, we want to have a corner pin data because we want to pin the 4 corners of the image so that it distorts in the right way. So let's just click on apply and see what we have. And it looks like nothing has happened, but when we click on our skull and hit U twice, that will bring up all keyframes. And you see we now have corner pin data applied to each frame. And once we play this back, you see that we have now a skull that sticks to my head. And even better, something you may not have realized. Now, as we have pre-composed everything, I can add stuff to the skull. Like, let's say we create a red pupil, which is at the moment, of course, really just basic, but everything we do within that skull layer now gets applied onto our footage. So as I told you, this is really just basic, but if you want to bring this further, you can add stuff to it and make this look super realistic, and everything will update within your main comp. And here's another cool trick. We can also bring out our zombie footage down here, and now we can work on this whole look while we are also looking at the final result. Because when I click on this, I can turn this to a guide layer. And you see that this is a guide layer because it has this small square over here. So back in our zombie comp, I can click on the skull and you see I only see the skull, but in the skull, I also see the footage. This guide layer just shows up in that composition. And also if you render that shot, that layer won't be rendered. So this is really just for your reference and such a cool tool. So we have created the face, and now as you know the workflow, I will go over the body a bit quicker. But remember, we are also going to take a look at the slime footage, and I will give you a super handy trick on create really gory stuff, make it look realistic and make it look alive. So let's do this. We go onto our zombie footage and just bring out the key light effect, drag it onto here, and as simple as that, we can simply key out my green suit, fine tweak this a little bit, and I love doing that by clicking on the color and then just changing the color in here. And now let's just go into clip black and clip white and adjust it. And don't worry about all the stuff that's happening to the other parts of the image. We can work on that later. Because we can simply duplicate our zombie footage once again, bring it on top, get rid of the key light effect, and simply make a quick mask around my body and invert the mask. So go to the mask and invert it. Now let's just bring this on top of our zombie footage. And I've also shot a clean plate, which is just my room with the same out of focus settings, but simply without me standing there. And I can simply drag and drop that beneath everything. And let's do the same thing as we have done before. Go to the first frame and create our body. I bring it on top of everything just so that I can get the framing right. Okay, something like this looks about right. I can simply bring it underneath the zombie footage. And again, first frame, I'm going to pre-compose it and call this the body. Hit OK. And now I can work on the body. With a quick key, I can get rid of most of this. And I'm just cleaning up the edges with a Joker effect. So I can do that while clicking Alt+4, and in that way I see the alpha channel. So I go negative to fill out all the small holes. Then I duplicate the Joker effect and bring it up to get rid of all those small issues. And what you could also do is go in there and mask out everything. But this is just a simple and quick way on doing that. In the zombie footage, we once again go into Mocha. This time, we want to go to the chest, and we have tracked that part. So again, being on the first frame, we click on that button to expand the planar surface. We save it, close it, and we can create tracking data. This time the chest. Okay, and again, the chest, so the body has the same resolution like the footage, and everything is set up on the first frame. Perfect. So this time we again want to have corner pin data, but this time we want to apply it to the body and simply hit apply. And in no time at all, we have a dead body that is following my chest. So this could already be the end, but let's go to the really fun part and make this look really gory. And let me start with showing you how to create a bumping heart out of a still frame. So let's do that. I have found this nice image of a heart. And it already has an alpha channel because I already quickly masked it out. And here comes the slimy footage that I showed you before. That is so super cool. I have here the VFX footage and I have the slime, but I also have the slime surface. And I just scale it down so that it somehow fits the composition. And when I play this back, you see this is really just slime going over a surface. This time I use the heart as an alpha matte. So I'm going to duplicate it and go to the slime surface, go to the alpha matte, and if you don't have it over here, you can click on toggle switches. And now we want to use the alpha channel of the heart. And remember, I masked it out. So I click on that and directly we have something gory. And now I can shrink it down a little bit more. But I want to add the slimy part to the heart so that just the white parts, the gray and white, gets added to the heart, but the black part goes away. You can do that by add. This is simply using your calculator. Think about white being 1 and black being 0. And if we add it, everything that is 1 gets added to the heart, but the black parts don't get added. They are 0. And everything in between is like from 0.1 to 0.9 gets added more or less, depending on how gray it is. So the brighter it is, the more you see it on the heart. So let's just do that calculation. We add the black and white values to the heart. Now we have something like this. It looks like it's slimy, but let's bring this a step further. I want to blur the heart a little bit because at the moment we still can see that this is obviously not a photograph. So I'm just blurring this. So this almost looks organic because of all the highlights that we added with the slime surface. So now we have that heart, but now we are missing the really dark parts in the heart. So I'm bringing up the heart on top of everything and I'm just going down with the blur a little bit. Now I'm again using the extract as we did it on the hair before to extract everything but the really dark parts and feather it. And with a levels effect, we can also make this darker. So honestly, I just wanted to show you with a few small steps how you can create something that looks really, really nice and organic out of a still frame. Now let's animate the bumping. Therefore, I'm going to create an adjustment layer. Maybe I call this HB for heartbeat, and I'm doing that with a bulge effect. So once you bring it out, you get a circle, and everything inside that circle we can animate as if it is bumping. So I can play with the radius horizontally and vertically so that it matches to the heart, and I can position it. And what you see here with the bulge height, I can then make this bumping. So I start from 0 at the first frame, set a keyframe for the bulge height, and maybe like 15 frames later, this is set to 1, and another 15 frames later, this is set to 0 again. And I'm clicking on that and hitting F9 or go to keyframe assistant, easy ease. Even better, mark all of them and set all of them to easy ease. And now our heart is bumping, but here's another super cool trick. It's just bumping one time. So I can alt click on the stopwatch to write an expression, because wouldn't it be nice if it would loop out the whole animation? And there are some pre-made expressions for you, so you don't even have to know anything about them. And when you click on here, you can see all of them. And as we have animated property, this is something where we want to go to. So the property. And we want to loop out. So after the animation is done, after the last keyframe, it loops out everything that was done before. So let's just click on that, and it adds that expression to our footage. And hey, when I play this back, you see the heart is constantly beating. And again, also for the heart, take your time. You can mask out several parts and add different textures of the slime to it to make it look even more realistic. So back in our body, I can now take the heart, bring it onto the heart position, duplicate the body on top, and now I'm just rotoing out like a hole where we can see our heart. And remember, we have put that inside our body composition, and the body composition is within our zombie composition. So now we have a gory heart that is bumping and that is tracked to the footage. One thing we could do for sure is add in another adjustment layer, call this CC, for color correction and desaturate it. Another really fun trick that I have done for the eye, I have once again taken the slime footage, scaled it down, but this time I have simply freeze frame it, edit it, and again use the skull to cut it out itself with the alpha matte, just to give it that extra touch. And last but not least, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's bring out some slime. And this is really the absolute fun part. So what I have done for those, I have once again extracted the black color on both of those layers and then simply tinted this. And for the white color, I went to something greenish, bright. And for the dark, simply choose a dark green color. Or what you can do, click on the black and take the same green color and then just go down. Now you have simply a darker version of that green. Hit OK. You can bring it beneath one of the versions that you have already rotoed out. And now, the last minute, I'm going to show you some final touches and color correction. At first, the zombie footage. Let's add a drop shadow to it, because we want to have a shadow of the shirt as the light is coming from that side. Would be in that angle, put it on that distance, and give it a softness, and maybe not that much opacity. This is with and without, and just helps selling this a little bit more. Now let's create a new adjustment layer. By the way, I'm doing that with Ctrl-Alt-Y. Add a crop effect to it, type in 10, and just do it for bottom and top. Now we have a cinematic look. And another adjustment layer, call this CC, and this time we are not going to do this by hand, but we are using the Lumetri color. Go into the creatives, and there we have some predefined looks. And let's just have a look on that one. Is really nice. So let's just duplicate it, reset it, and in here we can just play with something like maybe make it a little bit colder on the temperature and a little bit darker overall. And of course we need to add a really strong vignette here, because why not? And this is where I'm going to leave you this time, because this was really a lot of input. So this is already the end of this tutorial, and if you learned something today about motion tracking, if I could answer some of your questions about motion tracking with Mocha already, then hey, just feel free to give me a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel, because in that way I can do way more of those tutorials. Remember to leave me a comment, and if you have a question, I'll answer all of your questions. And for now, I wish you a lot of fun with creating zombies in After Effects.